Ndị be anyị ka ụbọchị nke taa mara na anyị mma. Asị m na ọ ya bala okeke bala oke afọ. Asị m na ọ ya dịrị ndị Igbo niile na mma, na ya dịrị anyị Igbo na mma, na anyị nche ya dị ka echi, na echi ada agwụ agwụ, maka na onye Igbo ka anyị bụ. Ife anyị na-azọ bụ ka o esi dịrị anyị na mma, ọ bụrụ onye ji nke ya. Ma dịka o si dị, ihe a bụ Igbo midia ka anyị si wee na-ewetara unu nnukwu ozi ya dị oke mkpa gbasịta maka ihe na-eme na be anyị bụ ana Igbo, ana gbasịta maka ntọrọ ọdịda anyanwụ a na-akpọ Eastern Region, ya bụ Igbo midia. Dịka o si dị, o nwere ihe anyị ga-etinyere unu n'iru akwụkwọ gbasịta maka nnwere onwe a na-azọ, ihe Biafran Prime Minister kwuru n'iru akwụkwọ. Mma achọ ka Igbo mụrụ nze mụọ ọzọ, ka ndị Igbo ji biri, jegodi na ya bụ ife, gee na ya bụ ife, unu ga-esi ya, unu atụkpọ alụ, tinye uche nke unu, ife unu chere gbasịta maka ya bụ ife nwanne anyị nwoke bụ Simon Ekpa kwuru n'iru akwụkwọ. Ọ dị na ka o sikwu m n'ọnụ. Over to you, sir.
Of the independence of the United States of America, I want us to draw some solace from what America went through in the hand of British before the independence of America. And I want Biafra people and our friends and well-wishers and journalists who are seated on their various locations listening to me today, I want to draw their memory back independent. How the America got independent, what led to the declaration of the American independence of 1876. Throughout the 1760s and the early found them at odds with the British imperial policies. We, the Biafra people, continue to find, at odds with everything Nigeria, every policy Nigeria is, we find it at odds as Biafra people. When repeated protests failed, when the North American found these policies at odds, the taxation, everything the British have done to an odd to them, and they started protesting. They repeated protest upon protest upon protest. The protest failed to influence British policies, and this state resulted in the closing of Port of Boston. The same thing that Nigeria has done to Biafra. Our protest never worked. Going to the street have resulted to the loss of lives of Biafrans. Gathering to air our anger against the policy of the Islamic State of Nigeria have resulted to many deaths of our own young people. And the request for the Biafra people to have a policy for them to excel in Nigeria also have failed. It led to the closure of all the ports, all the seaports in Biafra land. The same thing British did to America, to the North America. That when they rose up to protest, it led to the closure of the Port of Boston and the declaration of martial art law in Massachusetts. Enter Congress to coordinate a colonial boycott of British goods. The Congress then, the Continental Congress then, they also tried to boycott everything British goods, because the injustice of the British against America was overwhelming. They used every tactics to defeat Britain. None of these tactics worked. They protested, it didn't work. Rather, it led to the closure of Port of Boston, and many martial law were enacted against the North Americans for asking British that this what we are doing is not very well to us. We don't want this kind of policies. It is inhuman policy and not a progressive policy. So what the British did, they went and enacted martial law, and then they closed the port and all that. So they tried to boycott the goods of the Britain. So when fighting broke out between American colonists and the British forces in Massachusetts, United States, the Continental Congress worked with the local group originally intended to enforce the boycott. So they even had a local people whose their job was to enforcing the boycott of the British goods. So in other way, when people refuse to follow the boycott order from the North Americans, there are people who are going to enforce it by physically engaging, attacking those people who refuse to obey the boycotting of the British goods. This that you can use to fight Britain. Britain is one of the most evil countries on this planet. And many people who have fought Britain, for you to win any freedom against any country that British is involved, you must be able to take measures, just like the Biafra government is applying today. Extraordinary measures. You must be able to identify, the cardinal point, how to break the jinx of this country, especially when Britain is involved. So I want us to go to look at what America did, what America went through, and then compare it to you as a Biafran today in Nigeria. So the British official throughout the colonies increasingly found their authority challenged by informal local government. What does that mean? Informal local government. Now, during the time of the British was in charge of America, could be, equate to what we are having today as the de facto government in Biafra land. That is also something that we can call the exile government of Biafra. So this informal government always challenged the British government. Now, the British official throughout the colonies increasingly found their authority challenged by informal local government, although loyalist sentiment regarding this informal government, local government, or not even a state government or federal government, but local government, informal local government. While they fight against the British rule, there are still some influential. The Sabo, just like we have them in Biafra today, those who say instead of not Nigeria, they will die. And they are definitely going to die. They are loyal. There are still people loyal to Nigeria in Biafra land today. The same way so many people in North America were loyal to British imperialism. While the people who are in charge of the local government, the informal local government, were actually fighting for the benefit and the best interest of every North American. Some idiots, some criminals among them were still loyal to British government. Despite these challenges and despite these changes, colonial leaders hoped to reconcile with the British government. And all but the most radical members of the Congress were unwilling to declare independence. However, in late 18 or 1775, Benjamin Franklin, then a member of the Secret Committee of Correspondence, hinted to French agents and other European sympathizers that the colonies were increasingly leaning towards seeking independence because of the heat that they received from those who were ready to take their freedom and America become what it is today. While perhaps true, Franklin also hoped to convince the French to supply the colonies with aid. Independence would be necessary, however, before French officials would consider the possibility of alliance. Throughout the winter of 1775 to 1776, the members of the Continental Congress came to view reconciliation with the British as unlikely, and independence the only course of action available to them. Today, It is the same thing with us. This has happened to America over 200 years ago. Today, it is happening to us. There is no chance of reconciling with Nigeria. The only thing that will reconcile us as a people, as a nation with Nigeria is when we parted away with them. It is only the independence of Biafra that is going to reconcile us with anything Nigeria. Once we have independence, the reconciliation will start, because we are going to be good neighbors, we are going to do businesses, we are going to go into alliances, and everybody will respect each other border, each other law, and each other jurisdiction. So we are not going to reconcile with Nigeria until we have our independence from them. And this is exactly what is playing out here, but a lot of people don't know history. So throughout this time, the members of the Congress came to that view of reconciliation with the British as unlikely, and independence is the only course available to them. When on December 22, 1775, the British Parliament prohibited trade with the colonies, Congress responded in April of 1776 by opening colonial ports. This was a major step toward severing ties with Britain. The colonies were aided by the January publication of Thomas Paine, a pamphlet, Common Sense, which advocated the independence and was widely distributed throughout the colonies. By February of 1776, colonial leaders were discussing the possibility of forming a foreign alliance and began to draft the model treaty that would serve as a basis for the 1978 alliance with France. The same thing, the same game Britain is telling Nigeria to play today. Look at them. Now, the president of Nigeria, that is a drug lord, is running to France. Our own sister called Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, you can see her dancing with the president of France. All of them are ready to sell anything sellable in order to maintain their status quo within the society, because Nigeria has made them. Nobody wants to lose his or her relevancies. It is called selfish interest. You do not want to have the interest of the majority of your people to override your interest. It is always your selfish interest, whatever that favors your status in the society, you don't want to jeopardize it. So they see that supporting Biafra is like jeopardizing the status they have attained from Nigeria. That is what is happening. Why other people did not do that? Of course, even in the history, many people did it. Why this is our security report today is so that you know why Biafra government has raised this army called the Biafra Liberation Army and Biafra Resistance Fighters. The brutality of Nigeria can no longer be condoned by anyone. The brutality of Nigeria, genocide against Biafra people, ethnic cleansing happening all over Nigeria, the Biafra people have taken it upon themselves, and we have raised this army, the volunteer army, the unpaid army. They are called the Biafra Liberation Army, Biafra Resistance Fighters, and Navy. You can never defeat them. Those of them mercenaries that they have hired today are receiving $1,000 a day to fight in Biafra land, and we are decimating them. Why the people that are fighting with them, alongside with them from Nigeria, are receiving 50,000 naira a month? How much is 50,000 naira when you convert to dollar? When I will answer questions, somebody need to convert it to dollar and tell me why they are paying their mercenaries $1,000. $1,000 today is about 1.6 million. 1.6 million they are paying to their mercenaries who came to our land and they refused to walk on their foot. They are inside armored tank shooting. They don't want to come down. Those coming down and they are getting killed by the Biafra army are receiving 50,000 naira a day. Why those who are directing, commanding them what to do, how to do it, are receiving $1,000 a day, 1.6 million, and you receive $50,000 and you go there and die. The day Biafra will come. So the security report is that we continue to call on Biafrans in Olu State to be very security conscious.
Ndị be anyị daalụ nne nụ ihe a bụkwa Igbo Media anyị si wee na-ewetakwara unu nnukwu ozi a dị oke mkpa dịka anyị si kwuo unu nkwa na dịka anyị si na-agba mbọ ewere ike ị na-enye unu update bụ ihe gbasara maka ife na-eme na ana Igbo be anyị na ndị nwere onwe nke a na-azọ. Ọ ya bụ nkwa ka anyị kwere unu na anyị ga na-emezu ya. Ọzọ dịka ibe ya bụ iwe ọchịa ihe a kịta ị nụrụ n'elu akwụkwọ Biafran Prime Minister kwuru, gwa onwe gị eziokwu n'ụdị nke gị na nchịkọta mmụọ gị ka arụ iwelitela anyị n'ihe a, maka oke ihe ga na-esi na-emezi. O nwere ebe ekweta na ndị Igbo ya anọ, o nwere ebe anyị sịrị anyị nọrọ. Igbo abụlọ Senate President, Igbo abụlọ Vice President, nothing. And na ụmụ ihe ndị niile amegasịkwa anụ ụmụnne anyị esokwa na-agba owofa mgba maka oke ife ya je megidezie ajụrụzi asị ma ọ gịnị na-emezi ọ dị ka arụ achọziri ime anyị negodin ka obodo si dị ka e mere ji jide nwanne anyị nwoke bụ Maazị Nnamdi Kanu na mkpọrọ akwa maka ndị Igbo. Gịnị ka ihe ọjọọ mere? Maka ọ sị na Igbo ga-adị, maka ọ sị na anyị ga-adị ka echi na echi ada agwụ agwụ. O nwere ihe ọzọ eji jide ya? Jụọ onwe gị ajụjụ a, gịnị ka eji jide Maazị Nnamdi Kanu? Ọkwa maka ọ sị na Igbo ya adị. Biko ọtụtụ dị ka iwe chetara ife a bụ Igbo Media anyị na-asụ n'onu be anyị, ọnụnụ be anyị ka anyị na-asụ. So biko ọ bụ na ede anụ Igbo iwe ewe na gị, ọnụnụ be anyị ka anyị ji akọwa ihe na-eme ebe a. Ka ego ọkwa na ya anyị na-ekwu bifo unu ekwe n'iwe ka ife onye ndu melụ ọ sị na ya na-eme mgbomgbe ndị Igbo na-abịa ya n'alụ ọ na-ewute ya. Simon Ekpa pini ya anyị agbaba ya mgba ka e mere obedient movement. Akwụwụrụ okwu Maazị Nnamdi Kanu kwuru before ejide ya, they will never give you that president, that seat. Akwụdoro na ya na Peter Obi winere mana nyere ya. Gịnị ka nsị ya bụ? Mba, Igbo mana na ife maka oke esi na-ekwuzi okwu ọka ife ga na-esi na-emezi. Ọ bụ na ịkpọrọ onwe gị mitin, chụkọ onwe gị ọnụ, jụọ onwe gị ajụ a ka ebe ịkwụ n'obodo a bụ Naijiria. Ajụ nchọkwa onye ọbụla bụ onye Igbo na-ege m ntị n'elu akwụkwọ a, jụọ onwe ya na na-ejicha onwe gị ya bụ ife isaa ya. Ọgwụna ka m n'ọnụ. Ihe a bụ Igbo Media. Daalụ.